Hi, my name is Ashley Foy, co-founder and CEO of Renewology. This is the O Factor. I am very excited about our guest today, Dr. Jen Vandewater. She's a pharma MD. She comes from the pharmaceutical space, but at the same time has her own wellness journey, moving into that holistic natural approach. I think we're going to deep dive into when it's appropriate to do pharmaceuticals and necessary, but when it may be holistic and natural approach could be the better route for wellness. As we all know, there's a time and a place, I think, for both. And it will be interesting to hear from her perspective, coming from the pharmaceutical space, moving into holistic, and what ideas and approach she suggests for the consumer to take. So very excited. Can't wait to deep dive into this conversation. Welcome, Jen Vandewater.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here and share with your audience exactly what you said. Figuring out when and where to use, supplements, when and where to use pharmaceuticals, and how to live in a more holistic approach to our wellness. We've kind of steered away from that through the years. And that actually will lead into great on how I became a pharmacist and why I felt, pharmacy was a journey for me. Right out of high school, I got a job as a pharmacy technician in my local, Rite Aid at the time pharmacy. And I was never really intrigued by the pharmaceuticals, believe it or not. I was enjoying being out in the community with the people. That actually stirred a passion in me. I loved the engagement. I love people coming up to the counter and saying, "Hey, I've got a question. Can you help me with this? Out of these two products, which do you recommend?" And not only did I feel myself as just sharing the information, I wanted to give the ultimate choice to the patient. I wanted them to decide from the information I shared. I never wanted to say, this is the end all be all. I wanted them to make the decision for their best health. So after a few years of just, working at the counter and counting pills, I decided maybe I should just become a pharmacist, because the pharmacist I was seeing at the time, they did not have engagement with the people. They enjoyed sitting at the end of the counter behind the computer screen checking, and I would come up to them with questions and they would share their knowledge with me, and I'd go back to the patient. So I thought, we really need more engagement with the pharmacist and the patient population. So I decided to take the journey. And through my years of pharmacy college, I wasn't out practicing or doing anything in the industry. By the time I graduated, that's when I started to see things kind of change. So in the late 90s, as a technician, the pharmacist had the judgment. The pharmacist could counsel the patient. By the time it came to me graduating in 2006, it was pushing just prescribing or just filling the prescriptions that the providers were writing for. And it was pushing whatever was on sale, whatever sale item they had in the pharmacy. You wanted to encourage the patients to purchase that. And I was sitting there watching this. As you knew my approach as a tech, I'm like, this doesn't seem right. We're not giving the consumer, the patient, knowledge. We're just handing them something and telling them to go take it, and they don't even know what's really going on with their health. So as I worked in the retail chain, actually, I had one day, my district manager came up to me and he slams papers in front of me and he says, "You've got to increase your prescriptions." I'm like, how do I bring people in? And so my first response was, "What do you want me to do? Make people sick?" As that rolled off my tongue,
Wow.
I kind of had this like, wait a second, what is really going on here? And that was pretty early in my career. I actually ended up leaving the big retail chains because of the pressure. It was too much pressure to just keep filling prescription. It was profit over patient. And that was not why I entered the industry. So I ended up working for mom and pop pharmacies and really found that they care about their community. They care about the patients. They actually educate the patients. But what I noticed was the overreaching arm of big pharma with the insurance companies. The insurance companies were dictating and controlling, the money to these pharmacies. It was controlling how many prescriptions they could fill as well. Everything was all regarding, squashing the little guy and rising up those bigs. So I was quite dismayed. And my last role I was in was a long-term care and retail. So I worked out in the front with the people, and I worked behind the scenes packaging meds for our long-term care facilities. What bothered me here was seeing when you had a package, you put everything in your hand. And I was just like, wow, this is a lot of medications for these, our aging population. I thought something's not right here. And as through my years of practice, as I watched people, we're taught, and I know you have background in this as well, quality of health, right? That these prescriptions will give people quality of life, but that wasn't matching what I saw in practice. I saw the most medications that people took, they had the least quality of health, and those on the least amount actually were living better. And so I, at this point, realized I could not be a good patient advocate behind the scenes. I had to jump out from behind the counter and get out there. And so in the beginning of 2020, I had a job lined up with a doctor's office, and I was going to be their consulting pharmacist and go over patient chart reviews and actually work alongside the provider in choosing which meds to prescribe. And my goal was to decrease that amount going out the door, because it's harder to get someone off once they start. It's easier just not to get them on it, right?
Yeah.
So that was all set to go. I was so excited. And then March of 2020, everything changed. And I was out of a job. The job never actually came through. So I was on the sidelines watching things unfold, and again felt the stirring and passion inside me to speak out, again, be a voice for the unheard, be a voice for the patients who were just overwhelmed and bothered by everything they were seeing, and decided to step out. And here it leads me to where I am with you today.
That's an amazing journey that you've had, Jen. And, it's so many times we want this as a consumer, we want this quick fix. Pharmaceuticals do that for you. When you have a problem, you take a drug, you see results pretty quickly. And it's harder to go the holistic route because it could take longer. It takes patient compliance. It takes commitment and a lifestyle change when you go the holistic approach. So I think that it's, also comes down to preventative medicine, taking the holistic and natural approach prior to something serious happening or a major issue that you need pharmaceuticals, whether it be high blood pressure, cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. There's many things that we can change our lifestyle so that we don't need those pharmaceuticals in the long run. But what do you think was your largest challenge coming from the pharmaceutical space, moving into holistic approach? Because again, you've got education and training of pharma and prescription drugs, but now you're looking and leaning into that holistic natural approach and natural supplements. What do you think was the biggest challenge for you in that transition period?
Yeah, at first I thought I was like kind of going crazy, because we are trained, through pharmacy college, and I know you've experienced this as well, is that the natural world is kind of hogwash and doesn't really, there's nothing really, there's no there. Like, no, we have all the answers with these petroleum synthetic based meds. These are the cure all. And so the biggest challenge for me was to kind of break that mold, actually step out and say, wait a second, is everything I've been taught, was that all truth, or was that twisted in some way? And again, I'm not anti-pharmaceuticals like we discussed. There's a time and a place, but instead of digging to the root cause, like you're saying, and finding out what can be done, whether through natural holistic approach, whether through supplements, before jumping to the pharmaceutical, that was never taught to us. And so that was the biggest challenge, was kind of breaking that mindset, coming out of that and realizing there's others out there. And what I actually did was I started to talk to herbalists. I started to talk with, actually in my town, we have an Indian tribe. So I talked to the medicine man in the Indian tribe. He came to my house and sat here, we had tea, and he shared so much knowledge with me. And it kind of built the confidence inside me to realize, okay, the pharmacy world has its perks and has its downfalls, but what else is out there that we're not told intentionally, maybe to keep the big pharma profit chain going? So for me, that was the biggest challenge, biggest hurdle, was just kind of breaking that mindset and realizing it's okay. It's okay to not stick to one thing. It's good to just expand and see what else is out there.
You bring up a good point of breaking the mold. I come from as well the clinical space prior to moving into the natural holistic space. Treating patients of my own, prescribing drugs of my own, and realizing in this journey, my own wellness journey, my children, my family's wellness journey, that sometimes things can be treated prior. So it is hard to change that mindset, down to a dermatitis. If you've got dermatitis, you just want to go to the dermatologist, get a prescription cream, and it's gone. When it could be something underlining inside your body, inflammation, that going to the root cause of that dermatitis is probably more effective than the steroid cream that you're going to get from your physician. And again, there's always a time and a place. I'm not saying that don't use steroid creams, but what I'm saying is sometimes there's an underlying issue. Even down to if a pharmaceutical company takes a supplement, natural supplement, grown from the earth, made from natural pieces and elements of whether it be plant, fruit, vegetable, whatever it is, if they move that into one of their pharmaceutical drugs or even into research for a drug, the natural supplement space can now not legally use it anymore as a dietary supplement. They have to use it as a herbal remedy, which those two titles are significantly different. If you've got a dietary supplement, it's kind of holds a little bit higher weight than an herbal remedy. Sometimes people think herbal remedy is kind of hokey pokey, like witchcraft, but you just legally have to now call it that. And there are many of them, especially in the virus segment of pharmaceuticals. So that's really sad to see. But going back to our conversation, when do you think is that deciphering decision line of when to look at, okay, I need to go the pharmaceutical route, or do I go the holistic approach? Because one of my largest concerns is the overuse of pharmaceuticals, even down to antibiotics. Now we are buying antibiotics just to have on hand in case of something. But the problem is that when you overuse antibiotics, when you don't necessarily need them and your body doesn't need them, the moment that you do need them, you could have a resistance to that pharmaceutical drug that's actually going to help you now cure or remove something that's happening in your body. So my concern is that we've become everyone's become kind of the Google doctor. We're buying these med kits that, again, have drugs in them. Most of these drugs, you kind of need to know what you're treating. Not all antibiotics treat every single bacterial. It's different categories for different things, whether it be respiratory, whether it be digestive, urinary. Everything kind of has a category, and they don't all treat everything. And to overuse those drugs is just really, truly not only hurting your innate immune system, but it's hurting the future of if something were to seriously happen and you get exposed to something. Now a doctor has to figure out which drug to use because you've overused the one that was the go-to for that particular item. So I do worry that the telehealth and the instant gratification of having pharmaceuticals at hand, why it might be great to have, there is a negative piece to it of, oh my God, I'm sick, let me just take an antibiotic. And you might not really truly need it. And your body needs to build up antibodies. Your body needs to build up that resistance to that virus so that the next time you're exposed to it, it just knows what it is and fights it off. And you never see it again. So what do you think is that deciphering line between pharmaceutical and then holistic approach?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because I think a lot of providers are trained to just diagnose and then prescribe and not trained to speak and have a dialogue with the patient to actually see if there is something, in the mental health world, right? In the spiritual world that's bothering us, it's weighing us down, that's causing a reaction. And I have witnessed it. I had a patient one time come in to the pharmacy with a prescription. At the time, it was Celexa because it was still brand name. And she was very hesitant. My technician was in the restroom, so I went to the window and she slid it across the counter, but very hesitant. And so I picked up on that, and I think that is something that a lot of providers are probably lacking, is just paying attention to body language and facial expressions. And so I asked, I saw what it was, and I said, are you okay? And she just looked up like somebody's asking me if I'm okay. And she said, no, I'm not. I'm going through a very terrible divorce. I'm very stressed out. I'm very worried. I went to my doctors to just talk to him, and he just handed me this and said, this will help. And she says, but I didn't go there looking for a prescription. And
Mhm.
so I took time, I sat her down in the little waiting area and we chatted maybe 20 minutes. And I just explained to her, like, listen, we all go through times in our life where it's a down. It's not a positive, it's not up, it's all the part of the life experience. I said, hold on to this prescription. It lasts for a year from the date written. It's good for a whole year. If you get through 3 months of this and you're realizing, okay, I maybe I am suffering depression, maybe I am suffering some anxiety issue, maybe I do need this, but don't fill it at when you're at a low. If you feel you're going to come out of that low, because
Mhm.
then you become dependent on a pharmaceutical. And I totally left it up to her choice, but I shared information with her, talked about some natural things that she could do. And she left that day lifted. Like she walked away, like somebody actually just paid attention, allowed her to vent her concerns, and actually listened, didn't just sit there and nod and then write a prescription. But that's what I feel really needs to happen. I think people need to have providers and vet your providers, know if they're going to have those conversations with you, because then through that conversation, you'll know if it's a real health issue and you do need a prescription, or
Mhm.
you'll realize if it is something we can start. Let's start natural. Let's then maybe add supplements. Then we can go to the prescription. But I think that's where things have been lost along the way is coming out of med school. The training of diagnosing is a diagnosis equals a prescription. And there's no longer, let's get to the root cause. Let's find out what's really, bothering this individual. Causing high blood pressure is not always a heart problem. And every time somebody has high blood pressure, they go on a heart medication. And then what does that do to the body, right? So, like, I
Yeah.
think that's what needs to happen.
It's interesting, Jen, when you say that, because my husband, was put on high blood pressure medication, and the side effects of the blood pressure medication, it just wasn't giving him the quality of life that he wanted. So he made the choice to change his lifestyle, to change his diet, to change exercising, and get off the medication. And he was successfully able to do that by going almost as vegan as possible. So he knew that that was the right, changing a complete lifestyle was the right thing to do for long-term health. So I completely get that. And I think the preventative medicine is missing in the physician consult at this time, like especially with telehealth being so prominent and quick fix and message a doctor and get this. I think you're missing a piece, a conversational piece with your physician. I think it's important to vet your physician and know that you guys are on the same wellness journey, meaning you want to go the holistic approach. You want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to prevent future things. And sometimes it's down to blood work and seeing kind of, your family history. So I think we're missing that mindset. And I commend you for being able to break the mold. When you go through college and you go through training, it's kind of embedded. It's the same thing with even dermatology. You're not trained on skincare ingredients and how to do skincare. You learn that in the field. It's the same thing with your profession. You're trained on pharmaceuticals, you're not trained on natural ingredients. So I commend you for being able to break the mold, um, expand your horizons, and see what other approaches you could take on not only your own wellness journey, but potentially patients that you interact with. So I think that's amazing. And that's why I started this space. I'm not here to sell a supplement. I'm here to give the consumer information. I have almost 3 decades of not only clinical experience, but formulating supplements for companies, manufacturing supplements for companies, research. There's so many pieces to this puzzle that I have seen and witnessed, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that I want to bring that knowledge to the consumer and allow the consumer to make their educated decision on their own wellness journey. Everybody is unique. There's not a cookie cutter thing here. There's not, here's a supplement and a million people can take the same supplement and get the same results. I don't believe that that's true. I think we're all very unique, just like our fingerprints. It's the same thing with our DNA and our internal. Everybody's so different and so unique that their wellness journey is also just as unique and different. And again, always a room for prescription drugs and natural. It just really depends on that individual. So getting into supplements now, and again, I have a wealth of information and knowledge, but you also have kind of the other side of what we'll call it the counter. Supplements, let's just say, we'll start with big box. You have supplements from $3.99 up to maybe $20, $25. And then you've got on the e-com and direct-to-consumer brands, 30, 35, into the hundreds sometimes supplements. And not all supplements are created equal. Same thing with pharmaceutical. It goes with supplements. And what do you think is your take on this supplement space? Because again, you do know that there are some good, the bad, and ugly manufacturing practices. Sometimes that $100 is not even worth it. Sometimes the $3 is even better than the $100. There's just so many pieces to this puzzle. And the consumers have just so much, decisions to make when it comes to, is the $20 better than the $3? Is the $3 better than the $20? What do you think are some of the things to look for? What are the things that you've seen in this space, especially working for big box pharmaceutical and pharmacies? What would be some of your advice that you would give to the consumer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say not all of the high priced ones are as, well vetted, I would say, or pure as even your $3 ones.
Absolutely.
And so, right. And that was probably one of the things that shocked me the most, because I just assumed at that moment, oh, I'm going to buy the most expensive ones because they're probably doing the best that they can to provide the best product to me. And that's not also true. So, and in the pharmacy, like you say, the shelf is full of all sorts of things. And I want to just step back and say too, in pharmacy college, there was no course explaining supplements. What they told us in college, there was a little brief time, we had a couple classes that were on it, but it was the FDA does not approve this. The FDA does not, we kept hearing that over and over and over again. So it did put me on notice when I was at the pharmacy, when people would come in and be like, hey, echinacea, I heard it's good for like colds and stuff, and I was like, oh, the FDA doesn't
Start
approve that.
panicking.
You do, you really, really do, because you're like, wait a minute, we've been told over and over again.
And the
But
days
as I
before Google, right? So you're like, you
days
can't
before
Google
Google.
it.
Absolutely. And now that's exactly the same. Now what we do is we research. And the first thing I want to say is research the company you're looking to get that supplement from. Research their background, research where they source their materials, research what capsules they use, what fillers they use. That is really, really important. I didn't realize that was all a part of it. That you have to do that research, because then some that are not as expensive may actually be really good companies that are not looking to mark up so much to profit over patient, right? They're not looking to do that. They're looking to actually give forth a product. Everyone has to make money. So there's going to be a little bit of a markup because there's money that goes into it. And then you've got to make your cut outside of it as well. But there are some that mark up way, way too much, and it's unfair to the people out there, and they think they're purchasing something. And then there are those that mark up a lot, but they don't do their due diligence and research, and find pure ingredients to put inside these or source them, because we both know this too. There's parts of the plant that are most beneficial. So you don't want somebody to say, oh yeah, this is echinacea, but you need the flower and they've got the leaves, right? Like,
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's actually the purest product. So my first advice to people is, I'm not going to tell people what companies are best, because it's important for people to research for themselves and find out on their own which ones they feel comfortable with, because there's a multitude of them out there. It's not like there's just this one place and it's the only place to go. People need to really do their research and look into each company, and then from there decide which ones. So actually, I will say my supplement shelves in my home are a variety of manufacturers. I don't just stick to one. I pick and choose a little bit from different ones, and I think that's important for people too.
That's a great point, Jen, is that, sometimes supplements, they need to be in a certain form for your body to absorb them. Coming from formulation of supplements, I do know pretty much the cost of raws. I know what the cost of a supplement is. I can look at something the back supplement facts panel and probably estimate what the cost of that product is based off of what the retail price is. But sometimes it's a game of when you've got a big box like Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, any of those, they order hundreds of thousands of a supplement from a manufacturer and can bring their costs down when a smaller guy or company can't order as many at one time, so their price point is higher. So sometimes it's just the factor of that piece, so they've got to charge more because their beginning price is higher than a Walmart, CVS, or Walgreens, those types of big box. So I do know there's a lot of factors that play into the price game. But sometimes companies have a brand or personal name behind them that they feel that gives them that validation to charge more. Because there's so many people that jump into this space that don't have a background in healthcare, don't have a background in supplement formulating, don't really have a background in any of it, but they know that they've got money to push it through. So marketing and, having a name, having a celebrity physician, having all of those people kind of like promote it, they think that they can validate the larger price point, when in reality, it's probably not as good as the $3. So there's so many pieces that come into play with this. And that's why I always say is definitely do research, know who's formulating, who backs it, what's their background, owners, CEOs, all of the executives, do they come from this space? Do they not come from this space? Are they just jumping into it now because it happens to be, $100 billion industry? So there's so many pieces that come into it. Sourcing as well. You can source as much as you want to source all United States or homegrown. Reality is there are a lot of things that do come from overseas, and it is what it is. You really don't have even sometimes the choices. Vitamin C, the majority of vitamin C comes from overseas. Most people don't realize that. It's just not sourced here. So maybe changing the way that manufacturers, maybe getting more people that source raws in the United States would be kind of a next adventure, which would be amazing. So doing the research on the company, but also doing the research on the supplement. There's different forms of the supplement, how they're absorbed. Can they be absorbed? Can you put these two ingredients together and they are absorbed? Because again, like for example, heavy metals, you can't put two heavy metals together because your body just can't absorb. It's hard enough to take one versus taking two. It's just not a supplement that you want to put into your body because it's just doing nothing. Is it the right form? Magnesium. Magnesium's getting quite a splash right now, and it is great to have it magnesium. I think there's a lot of people post COVID that are having magnesium deficiencies, but is it the right form that your body can absorb? Is it the right form for what you're treating? Are you trying to do sleep? Is it the right milligrams that even science-based evidence shows it's got to be at this to even help you? So there's so many things that people don't realize when formulating that companies market. Oh, it's got magnesium and it's got melatonin and it's got L-theanine, all these different ingredients for sleep. But when you look at the research on them, it's got to be at this milligrams or this dose to even be effective. And then you look at the bottle and you go, okay, well, it's like 1% of what the science and research is. So I think that's a big piece to it. And doing your research, Google is amazing, but sometimes can be also not so amazing because people want to treat themselves by Google. But when you research supplements, you look at case studies that are validated. They're independent case studies. They're not case studies from companies or, let's say, healthcare companies. It's more just that's all they do is research. I do NCBI. I think it's the most probably well-rounded studies. So getting back to you, how do you, coming from that pharma space and knowing prescription drugs, how do you as an individual start making the choice for what supplements to take for your own wellness journey and your family? How do you make those decisions? How do you say, okay, these are supplements that I'm going to take now that you're breaking the mold of the pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I will say, and you would agree to this, do not just stop any pharmaceuticals. That's really important. It's a process and a journey. If you've been on them for so long, your body's balanced around them. And yes, it is good to come off, but it is, a step-by-step process. And sometimes you go back before you really go forward. And it's okay. It's definitely a journey, but that's really important. And definitely talk to a provider, a trusted provider who would understand your desire to come off of prescribed medications.
I think
But
that's
there's a few things too inside of this. The supplement world is good, but it's exactly what it is. It's a supplement. We have to change our lifestyle as well, which I think, it's the hardest. It's really hard for people to kind of understand that they've been consuming, you know, food that's not really food. And so there's a whole other world that we can have another show on, just talking about the diet and nutrition, right? Because that's really important too. And a lot of times, if you pay attention again to your body, you'll start craving certain foods. And then, oh, I'm lacking something that food has, that food can give me. So I think it's, coming to a lifestyle change, knowing again what supplements your body needs. Lab work is actually really great to help some minerals you're depleted in, things like that. I think that's going to be really helpful too. And again, it's all with a trusted provider, someone who's going to help you along this holistic wellness journey. That's not going to, kind of tell you that you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't come off your prescribed meds, because that's really important to have that really trusted relationship. And then I think another key part is movement. We've become very sedentary in this generation specifically. That movement helps your body metabolize, it helps your body digest, helps your body absorb. Movement is really good, and it helps boost mood. So a lot of times people are, not sure why they're not feeling well or things are happening. It's because you're not moving enough. Getting outside. I mean, these are just your freebies, right? This isn't going to cost people anything. This is
Yeah.
what you can do. We all do this, right? I know you do. I do. Get outside, walk barefoot in the grass, in the dirt. Allow yourself to sit in the sun for a little while. Know your limit. Know how much you can take, and allow the sun to touch your skin without any chemicals on it. That's really important. The sun has a lot of healing properties to it, but we've really steered away from a lot of those holistic and natural approaches to just staying well, because then you can then choose which supplements your body actually needs after you've done all these other approaches. Okay, I'm still lacking in magnesium. I've tried eating pumpkin seeds and it's not coming up. What can I do? Okay, maybe you just do need a supplement. And it's again, because I know you don't want to just sell stuff to people. You want to actually have them use something that's going to help them and be beneficial for them. So I think that's really important, is kind of the whole holistic approach to wellness. And like I said, I think we could have a whole other show just on nutrition.
I love the concept of lab work, because I do think that if, as we discussed previously in this episode about everybody's wellness journey is different and unique. And if you do lab work, it'll give you signs of what things are kind of borderline, what you're deficient in, maybe what you have too much of. So I do believe in that. And I also believe in, DNA and DNA testing to see kind of what your unique journey is outlined just based off of your body. So, and we'll probably get into that in another episode, talking about individuals' DNA and what supplements are best suggested for their particular body. But I agree, enjoying life. I think quality of life and a positive mindset is so very important, especially in today's society where we're exposed to a lot of negativity. We're exposed to not getting out as much as we used to, and doing the things that I think probably, Jen, you and I both did as children, and just being outside, being with other positive individuals, because that mindset is so important. I think knowledge is power. I think the more that you know, the more that you can make executive, good decisions for your own wellness journey and your family's wellness journey. And just to kind of close this out, I love this space. We're coming to an end, but I hope that we can continue these conversations, share more insight and information with the consumer. So I look forward to having you on again, Jen. I think that, you bring such a great perspective to this space, but your knowledge, and giving people kind of both sides to it. So I'm really, really thankful that you came on, and I enjoyed listening to your journey as well as your suggestions, because I just think that coming together as a community, we can really educate the consumer and not be pushing, a supplement, not be pushing a product, but just knowledge. So I thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to having you on again. And I hope you enjoyed it as well as I did. But thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here, and hopefully we can do this again.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.